Trying to mind map what drives oil prices. Well, one of the big factors that influences oil prices comes from really economics 101, which is the whole supply demand equation. So the basic premise, if you increase supply of oil in the marketplace, that will tend to lead to falling oil prices. Well, if you decrease the supply of oil, that would lead to an increase in oil prices. Conversely, from the demand perspective, if there's a great demand for oil, then that will tend to put upward pressure on oil prices. While if there is not that much demand or falling demand for oil, that would put downward pressure on oil prices. Now, as much as supply and demand are kind of like a chicken and egg kind of thing, there are factors that can influence each of them. From a supply perspective, it really comes down to a lot of it is about politics. Given that a lot of the oil in the ground lies in very politically sensitive areas and areas that can be susceptible to violence and instability, that can be a factor that could drive oil prices, that could drive supply. From a demand perspective, it's all about economic growth. If there's strong economic growth out there, that'll put upward pressure on oil. That can put upward pressure on demand and ultimately lead to higher oil prices. Second thing that can drive oil prices is really about currencies, specifically the US dollar. Oil prices are priced in US dollar, and there tends to be an inverse relationship to where the US dollar is going and oil prices. So conversely, if the US dollar were to increase in value, then that tends to lead to a decrease in oil prices. While a decrease in the value of the US dollar can be associated with an increasing price of oil. So how do you figure out whether a US dollar is increasing or decreasing? One way you could figure it out is by looking at the direction of interest rates. So increases of interest rates will tend to lead to a higher US dollar, which will lead to a lower price of oil. Conversely, if interest rates are falling, that could lead to a decrease in the US dollar and ultimately an increase in the price of oil. So it's no coincidence, if you look at the last few years, as oil was tracking around $120, $130 a while, the dynamic around there was the US dollar was very weak at that time. But since then, the last couple of years, 18 months, oil has been increasing, US dollar has been increasing in value, and conversely, oil prices have been falling. So it's something to keep in mind when you're looking at oil prices.